So now we'll be discussing about the DML statements. We'll be using the queries in order to write some basic DML statements, and we'll be doing it in case of single tables only as of now. So let's get started. Before doing that, it's important that you understand what is schema in database terms. So when we talk about a table, the hierarchy goes like this. You have a database at the top layer, and then you have a schema, and then you have tables. So schema is nothing but a logical grouping of different tables so that it's easy to identify which tables belong to which group. You can take the example of any organization. For example, in an organization there could be many departments, for example HR, finance, IT. So if you want to store information separately, you can use three different schemas. One schema will be for HR, the other one will be of IT, and the third one will be of finance. And then you can create tables in each of these schemas so that the people who are working on these departments can identify their tables very quickly and without any hassle. So you need to understand that database is a collection of tables and schema is also a collection of tables, but it is just the logical grouping in order to distinguish which table belong to which category. And we can create schema using a simple statement called create schema and then the schema name. For the time being, I'm creating a schema called HR. You need to highlight the particular statement that you want to execute and then click on execute. Press Ctrl R in order to get rid of the results window. Now the schema HR has been created successfully. Another thing I would like to discuss now is a two-part name and a three-part name. When we create any table, it's important that we write it in a three-part name when we are using a select statement. In that way, what it does is it tells the query optimizer in which database you should go and in which schema you should go in order to search for a table. If you are not writing the three-part name or a two-part name, then the query optimizer has to go all the tables including the system tables, and that could be a time consuming task. So in order to save from that hassle, what we can do is we can use a three-part name. So in our case, for example, if we have a table called employee, or I rather first create the table employee. So we have the table employee which has four columns. It has a column called employee ID, and then we have employee name, and then we have employee salary, and the last column is employee email. Now notice I've used hr.employee. So this means it's a two-part name. That is schema name followed by the table name. Now in the three-part name, what you can do is you can add the database in front of the schema, and this whole thing becomes a three-part name. I've already told you the benefit of writing three-part name, that the query optimizer would not have to go through the entire list of tables available in the database. So let's create the table. You have to use a use statement and then the the database name, and then again the go statement, and then the create table statement that we used in the previous chapter. And the new thing that we have introduced here is how to insert values into a table using a script. So the syntax is insert into your table name and then values, and then the bracket start and the bracket end, and it has all the available values. Now EID being an int will have 1 in it, and then ename should be enclosed in quotes because it's of string type, and then salary is int, so you can simply type any integer value, and then email is also a varchar, so you have to close it in quotes, and when you close anything in quotes it gets highlighted in red color. Now EID cannot be the same for all the employees, so we'll make it a different for every employee. Now let's go ahead and execute this or these statements. So you see when I highlight on execute, in bracket it says F5. So F5 is the shortcut or the alternative to the execute button. If you don't want to click on execute, you can simply click on the keyboard F5 and it will execute the statements. So when we executed the statement, we encountered an error called string or binary data would be truncated. Now why it is so? Just look at the statement. It says that the data would be truncated, which this means that there might be an instance where the supplied value might have increased the allocated value for a particular column. Now there are two varchar columns that are ename and email, and we have given the length of these columns as 10 and 100 respectively. So if you go through the various insert statements, you will see that most of the names are lesser than 10 characters long, but except for this Hannah Montana. So we will try to count the number of alphabets in it. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need to count the white space or the blank as well. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's more than 10. So in order to fit this name into the table, or what we have to do is we have to increase the length of the varchar column, and let's see, we make it as 50. Now we will have to drop the table first in order to create another one with the same name, because the SQL optimizer will not allow, or the SQL engine will not allow the same table name twice, because ultimately obviously it will be very confusing. So it's better not to do it in the first case, because even if you do it, we will encounter an error. So now click on execute again. So the table is dropped. So we'll get rid of the drop statement. Now if you execute these bunch of statements, I'm sure that you will get a success. So you can see you got a success. And another thing that might be new to you is these 4 messages. So whenever you are inserting any values into your table, you will be able to see the rows affected with that operation. So we had 5 insert statements. So for each of the statements, you have encountered 1 rows affected message, and this is 5 times. So this means all the insert statements or all the insert operations were successful. Now let's query the table in order to see whether we have inserted the values or not. So we will use the 3-part name, and so this is so you can see that all the values have been inserted successfully. You can check that for John Smith, the ID was 1, the salary was 10,000, and the email ID was this, john_s@sequelforall.com. So this is the first select statement that you have encountered so far. So the syntax for the select statement is very basic. All you have to do is write select, then the column names. If you specify star, it means that you are fetching all the columns, and then from, and then the table name, and then we'll come to the where part later on. But the syntax for querying the single table is basically this: select, column names, from, and then table name. And we have denoted the table name using a three-part nomenclature. So we'll continue discussing about the DML statements. So please join me in the next subsection of chapter 5, and we'll go through some of the other concepts of matching, numeric ranges, pattern matching,